Hello everybody, welcome back to some more Overwatch League Pick'ems. I'm back here with Rod. Last week was a bit of a surprising performance from a lot of teams. I feel like one of the ones I want to talk about right off the bat is the Shock. I mean, going into their match against Justice, we expected the Shock to win fairly easily, even though like there was still kind of struggles there in the Summer Showdown. But Justice got a bit of momentum, having a 3-1 loss to the Fuel. So it seemed like they could have done decently. But surprisingly enough, we saw the Justice win in a map 5 finish. And then also against the Outlaws, we saw them we saw them lose to the Outlaws in a 3-1. Is this Krusty kind of sandbagging the stage, or is it just the fact that the Shock are just kind of falling off?
I personally think that, well, in order to know what I think we need to talk about another team, particularly in the East region, the Shanghai Dragons. Definitely was kind of expecting this to happen. Shanghai definitely likes to, it's been every single year, almost every single year, where they just kind of lay off the steam at the end of the year and just prepare for playoffs because this meta that they're in right now is very likely not going to be what's played in the actual playoffs, like in grand finals. It's going to be something probably with a new hero, I'd assuming.
I mean,
And
playoffs is coming at the end of these 4 weeks, so I
yes,
don't
but
think there's gonna be a
post
new patch by that
well,
time.
postseason, so like grand finals and all that, will have uh, Kariko. So I don't know how they like specifically are planning for it, but they probably are more or less looking forward to it because they have an Overwatch 2 build. They probably are experimenting right now. So that's probably where their focus is, I'd imagine. Because it's not a coincidence where suddenly two of the like top teams in the region just start plummeting like down in the rankings. I don't think that's really coincidence. Like I think all like even like all the teams. I mean, we've have seen like a few of the stages before. Like for example, last stage with the Gladiators, they definitely fell off because of the meta, but they were really the only team to do so, and every other team kind
Atlanta,
of Atlanta. I'm
London.
just saying only top team to do so. I think of like the very identifiable like top five teams like of all time, they've all kind of like fell down at least once. And yeah, that was just what I think. It just kind of happens, and I don't think that this stage in particular is going to impact who wins grand finals. Like just because a certain team's doing well, I don't think that's going to hinder or boost their chances for winning grand finals in any way.
Yeah, and then real quickly, just kind of finish off talking about last week. Another thing I want to bring up is the Valiant picking up their first win of the stage. Chances are Valiant are still going to be the ones missing out on playoffs, unfortunately, unless Spark like completely wet the bed and Valiant play almost perfectly for the rest of this stage. Charge picked up a victory over the Dragons, whereas the Spark lost to not only Chengdu but also to Philly. So I think definitely there's a shot for Valiant to make it at this point, because they aren't knocked out yet, but they are going to have to work for it, and that's going to be coming into this week, which we're going to immediately roll into with the East region. Starting off for Friday, we have Seoul versus Chengdu. I mean, Chengdu, looking back last week, they had a map 5 finish against the Charge and a 3-1 to the Spark. They won both of them, but they were both fairly somewhat close games, whereas Seoul kind of rolled both the Valiant and the Dragons, but that's also kind of to be expected when it comes to the Valiant. So Do you think that Seoul will take this 3-0, or do you think that there's potential for Chengdu to pull something off?
Very likely. I think Seoul is uh they still have the steam on, I feel. I think their loss to the Shanghai Dragons, they still have something to prove, I feel. So
Seoul's
I
also
still
waiting
think
for a
they
few more weeks to start sandbagging, though.
probably or
Gotta wait the
something like that.
playoffs
But
to. Gotta wait for
they
the
got playoffs.
playoffs.
They got playoff profit. So, but yeah, I think it's just kind of Seoul's looking to be the number one in this sort of in the Canton Cup. So I'm not gonna bet really against them. I think they have it in them to take it 3-0.
I think Chengdu could pull off a map. I mean, Chengdu's done crazier things. That's kind of what they're known for. So it definitely could go 3-0 for the Dynasty, but I think regardless, Seoul's winning. I don't think Chengdu has a chance of beating the Dynasty at this point, but I feel like this is going to be a pretty exciting match. Speaking of exciting matches, though, the Fusion and the Dragons. Fusion had a really bad performance last week against the Valiant, and then they had a bit of a better performance against the Spark. But here we have the Dragons, who are going 0-2 into this week. Are we gonna see the same sandbagging Dragons, or are we gonna see them actually try against the Fusion?
You see, I think like I don't think that even though some of these top tier teams are sandbagging right now, as you're saying, but they're still not gonna be like they're still not gonna lose to like every opponent that they're gonna face. Like even at like Shanghai Dragons is like worst, like even in years prior, they still picked up like some of the wins that they like easily could have done.
I
It may
think
have
even
taken
at
some
their
more
worst, I
effort.
think they weren't. I don't think they were beating anybody. Did you forget about it on
Okay.
your season? That was Shanghai at
Well,
its worst.
I'm talking about Coach Moon's Shanghai. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Shanghai's definitely going to win this, I think. But I think that they're definitely going to have a closer game to the Fusion than what people would expect, especially if we saw a top tier Dragons like we normally would. But that's just my take on this.
But that isn't my take. I think the Fusion are actually going to take advantage of this because if there's one team that is close to the upper echelon of APAC, it is Philadelphia Fusion right now. And even though they looked pretty poor last weekend, it's it's just a Fusion, and with how much Fusion have actually beaten the Dragons before, I have a feeling it's going to go in the way of the Fusion.
Uh, I think this is one that I think that we're both going to agree on. Shanghai Spark. I think that Shanghai's going to win this.
Yeah,
Spark
that was kind of
are
my. I was
Spark are
originally
looking
planning on.
terrible.
I was originally planning on like saying that like whole spiel about the Dragons at this match, but I decided just to say it at the Fusion Dragons match because I felt like it. But yeah, even at like Coach Moon's Shanghai Dragons worst, they'll still beat teams like the Spark.
I mean, to be fair, they didn't beat the Charge, but they also had Piggy on their side, so
Yeah, Charge
definitely
is
is
looking better
looking.
with
But when it comes
the
to Spark now, they have the two new support players in uh, Teru
Neko.
and Neko, who's a coach, and Teru, who was the Genji player on the Titans last year. Terrible support switch up. I feel like not Bernard, but they're super rich, and I'm blanking on their other support player, but it was such a better support line. I don't get why they are putting in Neko and Teru for some reason. I don't know if it's just like inner problems or anything. I haven't seen anything about this from Spark, so. But I think regardless, Shanghai's gonna win this. Spark are looking to be the worst team in this uh, stage. or when it comes to East region, because clearly they're not Paris. Speaking of bad teams, we have the Valiant as they take on the Hunters. Hunters have momentum. So do the Valiant, though. Do you think that this is a opportunity for the Valiant to pull off something against a somewhat competent threat?
Uh, Not really, if I'm gonna be honest. I think Chengdu are looking decent. I just don't have enough faith in this Valiant squad as of yet. And I just don't think. I think once they realize that their chances of getting in are like fading, I feel like they're gonna do worse and worse throughout the season. Like maybe they are. Like it could be that they're gonna play out of their minds in order to get that spot, but I think with all the internal problems that the Village has, yeah,
Yeah, honestly, myself, I think that the Valiant are going to be definitely playing at the top of their game. This is their opportunity, their only opportunity, and I think they're going to take advantage of that. I think that this is the time that the Valiant are going to perform at their best, and this is what we're going to be expecting from the Valiant going into this season itself. And hopefully, we can see the Valiant finally rise up to where they should be, which is not last. Next up, we have the Charge and the Dynasty. I don't think Charge is even going to take a map off the Dynasty, even with Piggy.
even with the improvements they've made, it's not
Yeah,
enough to beat the
I
Dynasty.
think that the win against the Dragons was a complete fluke. I mean, the Dragons, even, like you said, at their worst, they can still pick up victories. And the Charge didn't deserve that victory. I think that was a pure slip up by Shanghai.
It was probably also a fact of like under judging an opponent or over. Yeah, like they probably thought they were gonna be an easy win, so they probably took it a little bit lax. And I think like the piggy probably threw him for a loop.
Yeah. And speaking of Piggy, he's up again as the Charge take on the Fusion on Sunday. Uh, I actually have faith in Guangzhou. I think that they could take a very close game against the Fusion and possibly even pick up the victory here. Like I think that with the Piggy improvements and that like this team is looking a lot stronger, and I think that they're definitely going to be one of the like lower middle teams. Definitely like the lower end of it. But they're definitely not. This is definitely not the Guangzhou Charge that we've been seeing the past three stages. If that makes
Yeah, that
sense.
I mean, yeah, in a quite literal sense, yeah, because we have entirely new support line plus piggy. The only thing that's really kind of there is the DPS.
Which even then, it's
But
just Choi Se Hwan, who I think is
yeah,
pretty much benched at this point. Because don't they have Jimmy and don't they have another new DPS to go alongside?
I think it might just be Jimmy and Choi Saiwan. But anyways, I think it's it's a good squad, but I think after last after last week, the Fusion are gonna have some good VODs to go through, and they're gonna know the charge. They won't be like a dark horse team, like since they know they can beat the Dragons. And so I think Philly should hopefully know how to beat the charge, and they'll definitely have the pieces to do it because not only do they have like a solid core team, they also have the star power to do so. So I think they'll probably win it, even if it is close.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Like the Fusion, they're a great squad, but I think Charge definitely still uh, have that opportunity. Next up is probably the match I'm most excited for uh, when it comes to the East region. That being the Hangzhou Spark against the Los Angeles Valiant. The two bottom teams of APAC right now. And I think this is still an opportunity for Valiant to kind of prove themselves. And I think they're going to do it. I don't think that Spark is going to be able to beat the Valiant.
Yeah, I also think it's probably gonna be like a 3-1 for Valiant.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go map 5. It could go map 5, but I'm leaning more towards either a 3-1 or even a 3-0 from the Valiant. But now going on to the West region, a bit of a shorter week this week as it starts on Friday. Starting off with the Gladiators and the Spitfire. These teams have a lot going for them right now. I mean, Gladiators, they're clinched in for top 4 seed, and the Spitfire are still vying for an opportunity to make it. So, I mean, Spitfire's pretty much guaranteed to make it into playoffs. It's just a matter of can they make it to play-ins, or will they be able to skip play-ins, which seems kind of unlikely. But Spitfire still have that opportunity. Do you think they're going to be able to get that?
Well, I think this is probably gonna be Gladiators win, no doubt. But
Oh yeah,
I think the Spitfire is actually gonna be able to put up a decent fight because it's one of those matches where you look at it and it doesn't really look that like competitive on paper, but uh, both these teams are pretty good, and I think with enough things going right, I think it'd probably go on at 5 Spitfire.
like it. Yeah, London could definitely win this, but it would take a lot. And the Gladiators, they lost Patty. He retired. They lost Ons, so the team has to kind of recoup with Happy, and it's working really good. So hopefully the Gladiators can keep that momentum uh with Happy as they pick up this victory against the Spitfire. Next up is a do or die scenario though for the Vancouver Titans. They pretty much have to play perfect in order to secure their spot in playoffs, but it's looking less and less likely of that to happen with teams such as the Justice and the Uprising performing so well last week, and Vancouver kind of not being able to continue their momentum from the Summer Showdown. Uh, and I do want to say Vancouver is looking a lot better still. I think that this is definitely not like a horrible look of Vancouver. But their schedule is just way too bad right now, and I don't even think they're going to take a map off the Dallas Fuel.
Yeah, you said do or die. This is a die or die. There's no choice about it. Uh, Dallas, they didn't put any. Uh, they put the pedal to the metal, and they're still rolling through this tournament, and they did not stop from last tournament. And the Titans are just another stepping stone for them to get to number one.
Yep. And next up, though, we have the Shock and the Defiant. Uh, I mean, Defiant looking for revenge from the Summer Showdown tournament, whereas Shock definitely not looking phenomenal. Do you think that there's possibility for Shock to go 0-4 in the past 4 matches they've had, or past
Well,
4 regular season?
I did say I think yeah, like I said with the East region with the Shanghai Dragons, even at teams' worst point, they could still easily beat some of the more midder teams
Midder.
right now. Yeah, midder, like
You mean
mid.
more mid?
Yeah, I mean, Toronto Defiant, they were kind of just a one-stage wonder, and I don't know if they can repeat any of the magic that they had uh in the previous tournament. I mean,
Yeah.
they just didn't really look that good. I think it's probably close since Shock isn't trying as hard as they normally are, or at least that's what it looks like. They could generally be trying, which would be scary for the Shock.
Yeah, because I mean, there's
But
just a quick look at last week's performance from the Defiant. I mean, they I believe they got reverse swept both games, but regardless, they went map 5 and they lost against both Atlanta and New York. Is that seems like a likely story from what's going to happen with the Defiant this week, and I think that that's what's going to happen against the Shock. Would you care to agree, or do you think it's going to be an even
Yeah, I was
cleaner
saying it's.
victory?
I think it's gonna be a map five against the Shock, or with the Shock winning.
Next up, though, we have the Spitfire against the Fuel. Again, just like I said with the Gladiators match, London has a lot to play for here. They're still in contention for bypassing play-ins. So, but then you also have the Dallas Fuel, and I don't think this is gonna be as close as the Gladiators match. I think that the Dallas Fuel are just gonna kind of roll them a bit, but it's definitely gonna be a close four map series.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that myself. I think that the Fuel team is probably just gonna go, or I was going to say winless, but that's the other way around. You're gonna go the opposite of winless. This,
Undefeated.
yeah, undefeated, because I don't really think there's anyone that can really stop them in their schedule. Because most of the teams are at least like so above, especially with like Hanbin, who's really made a name for himself in the latter half of the season. So we'll see, but I think we'll see a 3-1.
Yeah. And another match I think is going to be pretty exciting is the Excelsior against the Justice. Both of these teams have had fairly decent performances last week. Justice coming off a victory against the Shock, while Nixel has a reverse sweep against the Defiant. Or not a reverse sweep, but a map 5 finish against the Defiant. Uh, sure, they lost to the Rain in 3-0, but I mean, Justice look really good here, and I think it's pretty clear that the Justice are going to win. But I think Nixel could possibly take a map off the Justice.
I think this is very similar to like the New York of the Summer Showdown, where they look really good or kind of really good in the first week, and then they'll just go back to being the New York Excelsior in the weeks after. Uh, Unless they prove me on otherwise, I don't really think I can see another version of the New York Excelsior other than that like very low win count, like almost as bad as Paris Excelsior. Like they have to do more than just get one random win that they just pull from the behind every stage.
So here's a matchup, though, I think after this, because, I mean, it's clear Justice are going to win, but it's just a matter of what kind of Nixel are we going to be seeing. Likely, as you said, the really bad Nixel. So, but here's a matchup that I think is going to be really exciting is the Atlanta Reign and the San Francisco Shock. I mean, Shock not performing the best right now. Atlanta is back to their kickoff clash kind of glory. Uh, Personally, myself, I think that the Atlanta Reign are gonna have a pretty solid victory over the Shock this week. Would you care to agree, or do you feel that the
Yeah.
Shock are gonna be able to beat the Reign?
Well, I think the Shock are gonna put up a decent fight, but Rain actually do look like they're pretty good like contender. Like this is the Rain that everyone thought we are gonna get at the beginning of the season. Like it's it feels like the same Rain we've seen from last year, the one that was like always, you know, just near the top. And I think just near the top is what you need to beat the Shock right now, who aren't at that moment as of right now. At least
Why is my
in this
phone
tournament.
clicking?
So I think it's probably gonna be a map five because Shock can still put up a fight even in a weakened state, in a state where they're trying not so much anymore. But I think it's probably gonna be a win for the Rain.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, Definitely two really great teams, and I'm hoping for a pretty good matchup. But I mean, again, one thing I actually have to bring up is the Shock are actually still kind of, if they were to lose both these matches or win both of these matches, but do them worse than the Dallas Fuel, they're gonna lose that first seed. So it's just a matter of, will Shock be playing for that first seed, or are they fine losing first seed?
I think a team like this is going to be fine losing first seed because even if they lose that first seed, if they can spend time preparing for grand finals, that's like more valuable than a seed to them. So I guess that's probably the coaching strategy for them, and it might make sense with like a newer or a rookie team is to, don't just be the top team, like actually learn and focus on what you need to know rather than just being the top team because that's the one everyone's going to be trying to beat because I bet you every team going into the playoffs is going to be looking to beat the Fuel, is going to be looking to beat the Dynasty because those are the teams that's going to look good going into grand finals.
All right, so going on to the final day of the week, we have the Excelsior against the Gladiators. I don't feel like there's anything to say here. Gladiators are going to win 3-0. Do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Atlanta probably going to win 3-0 against the Justice, but I mean, this is a pretty decent looking Justice. They picked up the victory against the Shock, and I think that they might actually pick up a map against the Reign. But aside from that, I mean, I wouldn't give this a map 5 to the Justice.
I would.
And that's your mistake.
Well, it's not really a mistake. I think it's what's the word I'm looking for? Acquired taste, you know. The Justice are a team that, or I'm not really looking at the Justice here. I'm looking at the Reign. I'm still a little bit iffy on this Reign team. They're looking really good right now, but they did having end up having a close fight to Toronto, which makes sense for it to be like a battle of top two teams, but then Toronto lose against Excelsior, and then it's just kind of a mess of spaghetti all over the standings. And I think we really just don't know where these teams are as of yet. I think week three will have a good gauge, but there's just not enough information to reliably say which of these two teams are better per se. I do think it's the Rain, definitely. I just don't know how much.
Alrighty, and moving on to the final matchup before Overwatch 2 releases, we have the Vancouver Titans against the Toronto Defiant. Like you said, Toronto, they beat the Reign, but they also lost to the Excelsior. Whereas Vancouver, I mean, they lost to the Gladiators, they lost to the Spitfire, but Defiant definitely lost to a bit of a really bad team. So, could this be a matchup for Vancouver to possibly come out with a victory in? Personally, myself, I think so. I think that's going to be a very close game, but I do have to give it to the Vancouver Titans.
Well, mm, I don't know. I I'm not that so confident in a Vancouver team without Junker Queen because I think we just didn't see enough of them from week one to be able to see them win anything. I mean, sure, they paced off against two pretty good teams, but you know, we haven't really seen them do anything else other than the Junker Queen meta, so that's why I'm not really. I'm just gonna say 3-0 for Defiant
I mean, I
because we've
wouldn't
seen
give them a
Toronto.
3-0. I would give the Titans at least a good shot. They definitely do have the potential to beat the Defiant. But I don't think it's going to be a 3-0 sweep by the Defiant. Especially since they did take a map against uh, the Spitfire.
And I can definitely see some maps being taken off, maybe even two. But I'm just putting it as a 3-0 for my predictions.
Well, that does call it for the weekend. This is the final week of Overwatch League before Overwatch 2 drops. I am going to be doing a stream on YouTube here of Overwatch 2 Day 1. Going to be having Rudd there as well as a few other friends, so look forward to that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day.